Writing a book is easy. Marketing your book is hard. Let's try to make it as easy as possible. And one way you can do that without leaving your home is with a podcast book tour. On today's episode, you're going to learn all about how you can promote your book without leaving your home. Hi, I'm Dan Janelle. I'm a book strategist. That means I'm a book coach, developmental editor, and I can also help you write your book as your ghost writer. For more information, go to writeyourbookinaflash.com. Now, let's get started. Our guest today is Tony Guarnaccia. He is the president of a company that can help you create your own podcast guest tours, and it's called Castocity. And we'll have the URL for that at the end of the show, and it's in the show notes as well. So let's get started. Tony, first of all, what is a podcast book tour?
Yeah, a podcast book tour is where you take your book, and just like the traditional world, you used to maybe back in the day go to different bookstores, maybe sign some books and get your word out there. Today, it's easier than ever because you can do that through podcasts. So essentially what you do is you go to a string of different podcasts. My first year, I think I did 86 podcasts promoting a book I had coming out. And so it's a great way to get your name out there, build your audience, your income, and your impact.
Great. Well, you not only answered the first question, but you answered the several follow-up questions of why why do it? And so we'll just jump right ahead to how do you do it? How do you get the attention of 80 or 90 podcast guests?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's really three steps. The first one, I'll dig into each one individually. The first thing you want to do is, and I teach this about any concept with marketing. The first thing you have to know, it's not about you, it's about them.
Definitely.
And so you want to try to get in the shoes of the host and really ask natural questions like, what do you think the host is looking for? And so that's where you start. And where I like to start with that is kind of the traditional elements, right? You want to be known, you want to be liked, you want to be trusted. With podcasts, there's a couple other different barriers. One, you want to add value, and then you also want to potentially have an opportunity to collaborate. That's really what, from my experience, most hosts are looking for. And so, like, how do they know them? Well, trust factors might be your website, how you appear on social media, your experience, how you add value comes down to your topics and questions you address, your expertise, your bio, all these things kind of play. And so how does the guest know, or the host know that without doing a whole lot of research? This is where a media kit comes into play, or a one sheet, which is one of the things that my platform does. So it takes all this information and puts it together in one place, almost like a resume, but for getting podcast interviews. That's the first step. Now, the next step, if you want me to dig in, want me to go in the next step?
Let's do all three steps, then we'll dig in as time allows.
Okay. So the next step is to find all the podcasts that will interview you. So that's so where do you go? So there's some easy hacks for that. If you're an author, the easiest way to do it is actually look up your competitors or people like you in your niche, other speakers, other coaches. And all you have to do is you go to Amazon, you put in their name, and then you take that name and you put it in. Actually, we built a tool for this as well, but you can do it manually. You could go out and if you have, I know we talked earlier, kind of old school internet marketing techniques. The way you used to do link building, you take special search terms, throw it in Google, and then it would give you a list of all the places maybe you can get a link from a blog. Same concept applies today, but with podcasts. So we built a tool actually with our system where you put in other authors and topics that you cover. And what it'll do is it'll search the best search engine in the world, Google, give you an output of all the places where that guest, your competitor, so to speak, has already interviewed. Now you just go with them and give them a different pitch, which kind of leads to step number 3. So the first step is get a media kit in place. 2, find the podcast who will interview you. Number 3, you have to make a connection. And so this is where a pitch comes into play. The best place to start with that is with building relationships, maybe through LinkedIn or social media, or the absolute best way, which is how we met here today, is through a referral relationship. And so I have a whole training on how to do that. And we also have some templates that help you do that too. But essentially what you want to do is build rapport and really, most importantly, show how you're going to add value to their audience. That's the key. So those are 3 steps: media kit, find the podcast, and then pitch them.
Great. I'd also assume you'd want to listen to a few of their shows to find out exactly how they're focused and what they look for and the kind of content they're interested in.
Absolutely. That's part of the pitch process. So when you do your pitch, you want to make it relevant to them. So a lot of times in these templates, you'll see that you maybe reference a past episode or you reference some kind of relationship or some common ground. That's part of the pitch process. But yes, absolutely, that's part of the process.
Perfect. Now, I'm just curious. A lot of podcasters, myself included, get pitched by a lot of different companies. And how can you make your pitch stand out?
Well, again, the best way to do it is through, well, and here's a real life example. Here I am chatting with you, and I went through a referral relationship. So the best way to kind of is to understand who they're connected with, connect with that person, maybe go on their show, build a rapport there, and then get a referral. So that's the easiest way because then it's a person-to-person opportunity. This is also where networking events come into play. Having an offer, or here's the other thing: start with value. What if you could say, "Hey, I'd love to have you on my show," or "Hey, I'm doing a giveaway. Would you like to participate in my giveaway?" Or "Hey, I have a affiliate program." I mean, so adding value to them and seeing how you might pitch them. I mean, one of my friends, Jay Fassett, who runs one of the biggest joint venture communities, always says, lead with "I'll go first," and that's great advice for anyone.
Yeah, I know Jay, and I love that line. It is one of the best lines ever. In fact, I'm writing a book about pickleball and how to make friends with pickleball is one of the chapters. And I say, be the first person to say hello. My name is, and it's not what Jay says word for word, but let's say I was inspired by his genius, and he is genius. So let's talk about timing. When should you start pitching podcasters? Because it takes several months to write a book, and then it takes a couple of months for that book actually to go into production. And how can you time everything just right so that your podcast, you are being invited and the podcast shows up at the same time? It's sort of like a couple of speeding trains going in opposite directions and meeting at a certain point. How do you get to that point at that right time? And if it's not the right time, if it's a couple of weeks later, that's okay too. But in a best of all possible worlds, how can you time this perfectly?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What I like to do, and this is controversial, but I do it before the book's even written, to be honest. And so what I'll do is I'll do pre-orders of the book. Simple way to avoid that kind of problem because that comes up all the time. And you want to get out in front of the audience because that's almost like having a scarcity mindset. Like, I'm just going to get on this podcast and the relationship's going to end. But if you do it correctly, you can build a relationship ahead of time. And if it's a great host, maybe they have another property they can promote you on. So I just did I'm doing a campaign with someone right now. And yes, I did a podcast, but subsequent to that, I'm going in an email newsletter. They're doing an email promotion for a program I have listed. I did a LinkedIn Live actually this morning. So there's a whole thing, a whole lot there. So don't just think, oh, I'm just going to get the podcast. So my advice would be start as early as possible. And a lot of times, if you have a great message, you'll be invited back to the podcast. So even if you go back 6 months or a year later, still an opportunity. So my advice is to start now. And it's also a great way to kind of get an idea of how the book's going to be received.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually really good market research because if you don't get booked on any podcast, you might wonder, is there a market for this book?
Right.
So that's kind of clever too. I love the idea that you should start promoting the book before it's written, as well as a way of priming the pump and getting those pre-orders as well. So that's a really good writer downer. Love that. You talked about ways that the show host can promote your appearance. Let's talk about some of the basic ways that the guest, the author, can also promote the appearance. And I assume that'd be one way to actually ingratiate yourself as a guest during your pitch to say, hey, I have all these followers on social media, X number here, X number on my media list, whatever, so I can do a good job of promoting you. So what other ways can you promote the show as the author?
Yeah, I love that question. I actually have a whole course and actually a book coming out on that concept called Market Your Message. And what it talks about is a few things you can do to add value very easily and very quickly. So first thing you probably want to do is say thank you. Another thing you can do is after the show, there's an opportunity usually to build rapport. And you might want to say, okay, who do you need as a guest on your show? Is there a way I can help you? Can I add you, again, going back to kind of what we did to get on the show in the first place, say, how can you add value to them? Can I put you in my directory? These are things I'll probably ask you afterwards. Actually, I have a directory coming out of resources. Maybe I add you there. Then the other thing you want to do is rate and review the show. Podcasters love ratings and reviews. Go and rate it. Give them a testimonial. A video testimonial is a fantastic thing to do, especially with a video channel like you have. Go to the channel, like it, comment on it. All these things help the algorithm and help it rank. And then, of course, giving them other opportunities for sales referrals. So if you know what they're doing, if you kind of meet people, give them introductions. So both from a podcast perspective, but also from a revenue perspective. And then from a marketing perspective, what you want to do, and hopefully if they're a great host, they'll give you a lot of these assets. A lot of times they don't, honestly, but this is where if you don't have any marketing assets provided, you can share it on Facebook, share it on LinkedIn, wherever you can. And then if you get more sophisticated, you could create what's called let's start with the basics. So you can take a social media post. You maybe create a graphic out of it. You could even use the show art, post that, and then give some content that goes with it. And then as you get more sophisticated, you can do like an audiogram, which takes the content, creates a little mini video out of it. You can post that as well. So you can get more and more complex. That's why I wrote a course about it, where it starts, very simply all the way up to complex. But the basic bottom line is refer them, promote it, and just build more value to them with referrals.
Fantastic. You've offered a lot of great information in a very short period of time. And I know that you have a lot more information and courses on your website. So Tony, tell us, who is your ideal client and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, really, it goes back to what I was saying before. We're looking for folks that want to increase their audience, increase their income, increase their impact. A lot of times they do that through a book. And so that's where our platform really complements that, because it helps get that message out to a wider audience through doing that podcast book tour. But within that, a lot of times it's coaches, consultants, healers, anyone that really wants to be on stages and bigger stages and get the word out about their message.
Fantastic. And how can they learn more about you?
Yeah, so if you'd like to get our newsletter, our mailing list for what's coming out, you go to Castocity.com. Our tool, our media kit for people to be guests on podcasts is live today. That's at Podcast One Sheet. And what I always try to do is every time I go on a show, another way to add value is by giving a gift. And so Podcast One Sheet, there's actually a free version of that that I can give to everyone that's listening today. But within the professional version, there's actually the podcast finder. That's that search engine I referred to earlier, where you can put in other authors, and I'll give you a list of the podcasts to interview on. Just to say thank you for being on the show, I'll give anyone that listens to this access to it. And all they have to do is go to podcastonesheet.com/flash, just like booking a flash. So podcastonesheet.com/flash, and you can get that special gift today.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony. And thanks everyone for listening. You can find more than 150 videos on this YouTube website to help you write your book in a flash and market your book in a flash as well. Good luck with your books. Thanks.